Now, it is no longer news that Dangote will be listing his refinery on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. It's something that everybody is aware of. But the question is, will you have the opportunity to also be a shareholder in the Dangote refinery stocks? Because as it stands now, you'll be competing against major investors, you'll be competing against hedge funds, you'll be competing against pension funds, and you'll be competing against big investor. Will you, as a retail trader, have the opportunity to buy in a fair price at a fair time and make fair profit? Now, this is why we are here today, to show you other stocks that you can buy at that particular point that will make you to invest in Dangote stock, even if you call it indirectly. Welcome to Clockwise. My name is Providence, and today we'll be discussing 6 stocks. Yes, 6 stocks you can either buy now or buy in the future that will have the same effects, the same profits, and the same dividends like buying into Dangote refinery stocks. Now, I have my stock market investor, the one that will be coming to give us a live update of these stocks. What are these stocks that even if you can buy Dangote stocks when it is listed, even if you don't have the fair price to buy, but if you invest in these stocks, they'll have the same effects as the Dangote refinery stocks. Please, with a resounding virtual round of applause, please welcome my guest, Mr. Kandem. Welcome to Clockwise.
Thank you very much for having me once again.
No, not once again, having you always.
Thank you.
Yes. You see, when I was going through the various comments and the various contribution about Dangote stock, everybody's ready to buy Dangote stocks. Everybody, like everybody, big billionaires, everybody's. The question is that how would these retail investors, how would they participate? Because it's just 10%. It's just 10% of the entire company. So everybody wants to buy it. So how would they participate? So, okay, let's take our mind away from the Dangote stocks. If the Dangote lists his stocks today in the Nigerian Stock Exchange, some other companies will profit. And investing in them is like investing in Dangote stocks indirectly. So that's what we're doing today. So how do you see that?
Okay, so thank you very much for that insight. The fact is that it's going to be very competitive. So a lot of the priority will be for institutional investors, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, money market funds, and all of that. So the chances of the retail investor getting as much as they want, would they get something? Yes. But would they get as much as they want? The answer is no. So the idea should not be to look at everybody grappling for or watching for Dangote stocks. Rather, we should be thinking about what other industries will profit if Dangote lists today. I want you to consider it this way. Number one, it's going to be insane liquidity. We're talking about a company that is worth over $50 billion. Yes. Coming into the stock market. By the way, it's not just going to be listed on the Nigerian stock market. It's also going to be listed on the London stock market, the stock exchange. So to allow for global capital to flow in. So you are looking at global capital flowing into the Nigerian stock exchange. It's going to be very big. It's going to be one of the biggest liquidity events in the history of the exchange group. So we're looking at companies, and not going to waste time. I'm going to go into companies that are going to make a lot. Now, the first, when we talk about liquidity, when we talk about FX stability, we are talking about banks. Banks are going to make.
All right, now before we actually go to these companies, let's see how the ripple effects will actually occur. Now, how will Dangote listing on the Nigerian Stock Exchange affect these companies?
Okay, so first of all, let's look at the categories. The first one would be the financial sector, because you are talking about tons and tons and tons of billions of dollars coming into the Nigerian economy, the Nigerian exchange group. Guess who will be custodying those? The banks. The banks will be the one custodying those.
So banking shares will do
so
well.
banking companies will do well. Later on we'll mention some of the names that are most prospective. Also, banks would handle the way investors work is they don't bring in all the money. They actually do what we call partial risk guarantees, especially like, let me give you an example. Let's say I build a company now. I want to invest. I need to invest let's say 5 billion. But what I have is I need to take a loan. I could approach the African Development Bank. The African Development Bank could just invest $500 million of their money and leverage up to $5 billion. So what they do is that they use the $500 million to provide what we call partial risk guarantees and partial credit guarantees. Meaning what they're telling the banks is, listen, you guys can go ahead and lend as much as $5 billion to this guy. If this guy fails, we take the will kind of indemnify you to some extent. So that is exactly what happens. So banks are the ones that will provide the liquidity that investors need to actually get into this market. Then the last, of course, is FX inflow. FX inflow will ensure that banks are able to make a lot of money from treasuries.
Okay.
Banks make money. When you talk about banking, you talk about making money from fees, because when you talk about it, listing fees and arbitrage opportunities in the bond market. So when you talk about and that actually works very well when there is for FX stability. You know, two things work for banks: FX stability, and then if inflation, is not a runaway inflation, it actually helps the banks. So that's exactly the point, because they make money, especially for the tier 1 lenders. They make money from the arbitrage. Let's say you come in and deposit, let's say 10 million naira, and then a bank loans out. And remember, they are not loaning out against, they can give you, let's say, 2% for a high interest yielding account, but they could lend out, if the interest rate, if the inflation is about 30%, then you are looking at the bond market, the coupon on a 1 year T-bill could be something around, let's say, 25-30%. If that happens, then what that means that the bank can make a lot of money. They can lend out at 36%, and if they are paying 26%, that's a 10% arbitrage. So that's
exactly. The financial sector.
So financial sector is going to benefit very well. Next one is, which we have to mention, is the oil and gas industry itself, because Dangote refinery provides a very strong, the value chain now becomes very robust. So you have downstream players having stable access to energy resources, to petroleum, that's diesel, premium motors, fuels, you name them, LNG and all of that. The midstream, storage, haulage services, transport services of products. The upstream now has a stable market. They don't have to export anymore. There is a lot of logistic cost involved in exporting products. So they don't need to export anymore. They have a stable and ready buyer. Dangote is currently doing, the installed capacity at this point is 650,000 barrels a day. And because it has a modular structure, meaning it can continue to scale. As it scales, that means it's a scale. It scales the demand for some of these companies. We are going to mention names later, but oil companies are going to benefit. Both those in the upstream, the midstream, and the downstream sector will benefit immensely from this. Then the last I will mention too, which a lot of people don't talk about, is the food industry. The food industry, because Dangote has this Dangote fertilizer that's coming on board also. So when one of the biggest challenges in Nigeria has been access to fertilizers. There's a lot of racketeering when government tries to subsidize fertilizers. So we saw what happened. The Strait of Hormuz got shut, and a large percentage of the world's fertilizer supply comes from that strait. And we saw what has already happened in the price of fertilizer. So if we have internally a reliable supply of fertilizer, which Dangote fertilizer offers or promises to guarantee, then that means food industries, especially those that are in the upstream, meaning that those that are in growers, that's what we mean. Not just in growers, but people that are actually manufacturing. Because think about it, the cost of importing these products, of importing the raw or semi-processed products, is very high because it is denominated in US dollars. But imagine if you have an in-grower within Nigeria that is leveraging or benefiting from the fact that from the Dangote fertilizer. That means you are going to have a very robust margins for
all right. Now we'll talk about the sector. Now let's break it down. Let's look at the different companies.
Yes.
Company by company. Let's say you're actually giving us 6 companies. From your own analysis, what do you think? Which are the companies do you feel that you would like to invest in if you cannot invest in the Dangote refinery when it gets listed?
Okay, so let me start from the first one. Banking, financials. the first one I'm going to look at is Zenith Bank. If you look at Zenith Bank chart, you will see that it's been on a tear.
We'll get the chart on the screen.
Yeah, we'll get on the chart on the screen. You will see that it's been on the tier. Zenith Bank has, as a matter of fact, I don't want to make this very technical, but for the technical analyst, you realize that Zenith Bank has actually broken the resistance it made July of last year, and has not even tested that resistance at this point. It's been on a continuous tier. So Zenith Bank has been performing very well. It has done over 60%, almost 70% year to date. That's an insane figure. If you look at the chart, though, there are a bunch of imbalances downstairs. So which means I believe that at some point, the market always likes to feel out imbalances. Imbalances are like imperfection. Imbalances are like drawdowns. But without making this technical, the market almost tries to come back and fill those, because those are like on-field demand. Yes, so maybe that could happen. But from what I see, Zenith Bank has performed very well, and it's a tier 1 lender. Zenith Bank has international presence, and so a bunch of the investors that would want to come into Nigeria and invest in Dangote oil are most likely going to want to work with Zenith Bank.
What about GT Bank?
The next one I'm going to mention is GT Bank. GT Bank is very phenomenal. GT Bank has the infrastructure. As a matter of fact, it has an infrastructure that is prepared for such. Because when you talk about FX in Nigeria, the only bank that I can guarantee you walk into the bank, you get your money in US dollar cash, is GT Bank. GT Bank doesn't tell you stories. That reliability is very important because, number one, remember, we're not just talking about investors coming in with US dollars. We're talking about investors wanting to cash out their returns in US dollars too. Everybody wants to escape the rat race that the currency debacle has been putting us through. So you want to have a partner that you can walk in and get. I remember 2 years ago, I'm not going to mention the name, but a prominent foreign carrier in Nigeria, that's an airline company in Nigeria, complained that it was trapped. Its funds were trapped in Nigeria because it had billions of naira to repatriate, but it could not repatriate because access to FX was lacking. I mean, apart from the fact that this IPO is going to bring in insane amount of dollars into the Nigerian economy, because investors would want to come and invest here, but remember that Dangote is also supplying a lot of companies, a lot of countries, refined products. So that means that's an insane inflow of FX. So that means that if you look at it from both ends, you realize that it is a net inflow of FX, and you need a partner, a bank, a financial institution that will not just provide guarantees, that will not just provide brokerage for those transactions, but would also provide a what we call an off ramp, how people could take their money, repatriate their monies. Then the last one I want to let you know is that, remember, still in the financial sector, remember that when Dangote lists, that is going to, the Nigerian Stock Exchange is going to explode. Do you know that in the past 5 years, we have moved up to 6 million people, retail traders, from 150,000, 6 million retail traders that we have. By the time Dangote lists, that number could take up from 6 million to somewhere about 15 million or 20 million. That is more people coming into the market to trade. Guess who make money from fees when people when traders? And by extension the banks, because these are the guys that settle all of this. So the banking industry is primed to make a lot. So I'm looking at Zenith, I'm looking at GT. Maybe if I'm going to put an honorable mention there, I'll be looking at Access. But Access, if you look at the chart, Access has been range bound for a couple of years now. Access has been range bound, but the ones that have actually taken off has been GT Bank and it's been Zenith Bank. These are strong players.
All right, number 2.
Next one is the energy industry. Of course, Dangote is in the energy. Dangote refinery is in the energy space. So we're looking at a very robust value chain, oil and gas value chain. So of course, the very first name I'm going to mention here would be Seplat Energy. And the reason is because Seplat is any company that is in upstream is going to make a lot. So Seplat is primed to make a lot of money because That means they don't have to. I mean, I told you earlier about the logistic cost of exporting. Demurrage, if anything happens, I mean, if anything happens that you are not able to load product as quickly as you should, then you can pay insane amount in demurrage. Shipping, all of those things constitute a very serious cost. So supply is going to make a lot. We expect supply to. Then Aradel, of course, Aradel is going to. If you look at the charts for supply, if the chart looks unbelievable, there is literally no retracement whatsoever. If you look at on the weekly chart for supply, there is, for the past at least 6 weeks, there has been no retracement whatsoever. It's been on a tear. So of course we know the reason. So Seplat is going to make money. That of course that has been because of what we had at the Strait of Hormuz. But beyond that, Dangote listing means Seplat now has a very strong and robust off-taker of its product, so they don't have to pay the cost of having to ship them. Aradel benefits from the same thing. Then I also going to mention as an honorable mention Total Energy. So because we're not just talking about upstream, we also have to talk about the downstream. So Total Energy is involved they have filling stations all over the place. They are going to benefit, but there's a caveat though. Most of these guys are going to be like marketers for Dangote at the end. At this point, there's a lot of, I don't want to go into details, but they are trying to play the role of price setters. But remember, when a behemoth like Dangote becomes so large with this IPO, it's literally going to be the one setting the price. So these guys are basically going to be the distributors. Someone would say, "Oh, that's monopoly coming," but the reality is, I want us to look at the fact that we are looking at domestic capacity building. We have domestic capacity building. The days when we used to have long queues in filling station might actually be consigned to history, because you are having a stable and predictable production or supply of products. When there is supply of products, guess what will happen? Demand and supply. So companies will, those forces will begin to come in. So that is it in the energy space. So for energy space, we've talked about, about Seplat and Aradel. So then in the financial, we talked about Zenith Bank, GT. So maybe 2 more to go, but maybe I could add just one more. So then, and another sector that will benefit immensely, you could be looking at the logistics. Logistics, because if you look,
is it a midstream logistic?
Logistic company, I mean across board. But let's leave the upstream for now. Logistics here means movement of product, companies involved in moving items. You're looking at the likes of ABC Transport, for instance. They handle a lot of cargo services, a lot of human transport too. So you're also looking at a name that a lot of people don't talk about, but the Nigerian Aviation Handling Company. Because if you look at this, the reality is that when Dangote comes in, and this, I decided to make this logistics and not really talk about the airline companies, because the airline companies themselves are going to make a lot of money. They will be what we call margin expansion, and the reason is because they are going to source for aviation fuel locally. Jet A1, when you import it, and remember, you are not just the cost of the product, but also the cost of the shipping cost down to Nigeria. If Dangote is going to provide this, then that would mean that companies, I mean Lagos, most of the airlines, even those that come into that go to Calabar, they actually feel that what the quantity that will take them back and forth. So same Dangote is in Lagos, Dangote refinery is in Lagos. The airlines are feeling in Lagos, so that means almost zero logistic cost. So that will once it brings down the cost of jet fuel, which I told you constitute more than 60% of the cost of an air travel. So if that comes down, what does that mean? It means that more people would come into, at this point, I mean, for you to travel from Abuja to Lagos, it's costing about over 300,000. How many people can really afford that? People would rather use road transport. But if you have if the price of jet fuel comes down, that means the price. So why don't we have something like, instead of 300,000 naira, we have something around 150,000. That means you would have more people that will come in to
and
use
those will
air
be
transport.
affected strongly by Dangote.
So those will be affected. So Nigerian Aviation Handling Company and some of the airlines. I mean, airline stocks are going to make. Ibom A is not a public company. You can't even buy into it.
Yeah, it's true.
So, but so the company there, the transport company like ABC, gonna be ABC Transport is actually on the Nigerian Stock Exchange Group. Okay. So you can actually look at those.
Okay.
Then we have also, and very importantly, the manufacturing industrials. You're looking at Dangote Cement.
Himself, yes.
Dangote Cement is going to make so much, because do you know how much Dangote spends on moving cement across the country? He spends insane amount of money, and this is in diesel. Dangote producing diesel, you know what that means? It means that it will help Dangote. It's not just Dangote. So you could be looking at the Bois Cement too. So Bois Cement is going to benefit too, because
there's one cement company that is doing very well now. What they call it? It's very popular now.
We have Bois Cement, we have Lafarge. We have
it's Lafarge, yes.
yeah.
They are doing very well. I was looking at the charts.
Yes. I mean, sometimes you want to stick. I mean, you could also, who says you cannot go down the risk curve? But sometimes, especially for the people on this channel that are new people, you want to stick with the top two.
The
Dangote and Bois Cement. So what that tells you is that industrials are going to benefit. So you could look at cement manufacturing. You could also look at even the industrial sector. I've not mentioned petrochemicals. I've not mentioned companies that are even involved in producing some of the consumables that we use, because I like I said, I just want to keep it at 7. So we've mentioned the top 7 names now, but if you want to go down the curve, then we'll mention a number of names. But what I want people to take away from this video is that when you want to think about Dangote refinery, you want to think about sectors that are primed to benefit. That's just it. And then you look at how you can allocate accordingly. So I will be looking at Zenith Bank. I'll be looking at GT Bank.
Okay.
I'm looking at Seplat Energy. I'll be looking at Aradel. I'll be looking at ABC Transport. I'll be looking at Nigerian Aviation Handling Company. I'll be looking at Dangote Cement. I'll be looking at Bois Cement.
Yes.
So do some of the names. Now, within the financial space, when we could look at insurance companies, I did not like ICO Insurance. I didn't want to really go. I just wanted to stick to financials, to the banks.
All right,
in terms of financials.
Those would be the very best investment advice. Although we are not giving financial advice.
Of course, no financial advice.
Yeah, but I feel that everyone will not be able to struggle with this 10%, because I feel everybody's just ready and people will not just maximize the opportunity. So they can actually maximize this one you've talked about. They can actually maximize, and they will still have the same effect. They will still profit the same. Even on the Nigerian Stock Exchange itself, you can actually buy shares.
You can actually buy,
and you got the capitalization. You can actually invest in it. So, and it's a very good
There are indices. The banking indices in Nigeria has done over. I mean, it's surprising though. If you look at the oil index, you look at the banking index. Guess what? The bank index has outperformed the oil index by 38%. 38%. Think about it. So you have to understand who is a silent guy that is making a ton of money. You have to look under the hood.
Everybody shouting Dangote.
But
there are those.
That's why we spend time on this channel to look at some of those other sectors. I mean, some of the sectors, because when you look at, it's what we call this is an investment strategy. I always talk about the pick and shovel strategy, meaning that, for example, if I invest in the upstream, I don't care who is making money, who is winning in the downstream, whether it's Dangote Cement or Dangote Refinery, whether it's any refinery that shows up. All I know is that guess who they will still buy from? They will buy from the So what we mean by that is, I mean, during the gold rush, the people that were making money, I mean, a lot of people,
not those digging gold.
They were not those
selling
shovels. It was not selling shovels and those picks. So that's the pick and shovel strategy, which I want our investors or people listening to this channel to always think about. Think about who is going to make money despite who wins. Don't think about, don't try to pick names. I mean, if you try to pick names, that's why, I mean, just away from the Nigerian stock market, that's why I like Nvidia. I am a very big fan of Nvidia. I've been sitting on my Nvidia shit for a very long time. The reason is because Nvidia has built a moat. Nvidia now has what we call they operate a pick and shovel strategy. Whoever wins, whichever hyperscaler
wins,
whether AI wins, whether crypto mining wins. But even in the AI space, we have whether it's open AI, whether it's Anthropic, whether it's you name it. They will still rely on.
They're just like the banking shares in Nigeria.
Yes.
Whoever wins
is
the bank.
You still bring,
bring the money
the deal comes to the bank. So that's exactly what
I think that's a better place for us to leave today's episode, because next week or next time we are here, we are going to do a live chat.
Yeah.
And you are going to look at these banks chart. We'll look at it very live, and at least 3 of them, we'll mark them and see how they'll get to that point.
Yes.
Thank you for always coming.
You're welcome.
And we'll leave that for today. Now, on that note, we'll come to the end of today's episode of Clockwise. Now, if you know you cannot and you will not be able to invest in Dangote refinery stocks, you don't need to bother yourself. Now, these stocks you've listed on this show will actually do better or do well during that period. You can actually invest in them. Although we are not giving you financial advice, do your due diligence, look at the fundamentals, and also look at the charts. But if you want any other clarification, you can actually drop it at the comment section and we'll respond to it immediately. Thank you for actually watching us to this point. And also do not forget to like, subscribe, and also put a notification bell on this channel, because every week we bring amazing content. And also do not forget that the elite of the 21st century are not those who did not go to school or those who will not go to school, but are those who have refused to evolve as their environment is evolving. My name is Providence. I'll see you again.